This is Straight Talk with it leave Greg Fann, the Preacherman, and his sidekick Shanan Jones. Frank discussions of issues affecting the ATL, Fulton County, the state of Georgia, the nation, and around the world. And now, here they are, live and in living color, the team of Jones and Fann, the Preacherman.
Welcome to another edition of Straight Talk with your truly Greg Fann, the Preacherman, and Shanan E. Jones.
Hey, Bishop.
How you doing, big papa?
Oh, man, if I was doing any better, I'd be Greg Fann, the
Don't
preacher
forget.
man.
That's right.
The
Don't
preacher
forget that.
man.
Don't forget that last part. Don't forget that last part. That's
The
good.
preacher man.
Well, let me just say to you guys, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be on this week, starting on WIGO 1570 on your AM radio dial, and do tune in each and every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. So if you miss us here on YouTube, you can always check us out every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. on WIGO radio at 1570 a.m. That's the call letters. That's the station. WIGO. All right, listen. We go. That's an old radio station. That's one of the old radio stations here in the Metro Atlanta area. You know, we had WLK, WYGE. We had WXLL, and then we had WTJL, owned by Bishop Willis, and now we have WIGO still standing, and WLK. All right, two radio stations.
WHELL, WHELL.
What's WHLL?
Did you say a show WHLL?
No.
I thought you said it was a station called WHL. I was whoa.
I said WXLL.
I wouldn't want to be on that one.
I said WXLL.
WXLL.
Yeah, the XLL. Okay, thank you so very much. See, that predates you, son. I know you don't know those call letters.
That's back there when Booker T. Washington was your principal.
No. When Booker T. Washington was the school I attended to. How about that?
Oh, okay.
And by the way, I had lunch on today, which would be Thursday. That would be the day we're running this Sunday on WIGO. But with my classmates, the men of our class, we get together once a month. And I always send them out our program. You know, we hear from Leon Roberts. He always makes the comments about our program. Great athlete during the days at Washington High. And Michael Rush, he and his wife, he said, man, y'all do such a good job. Every week you send my wife and I watch it. You give out a lot of good information. And you know what they said about us? That we make a good combination together. And they really appreciate it. And good perfect combination. They said that the information that we give is very, very, very informative because people just don't know what they don't know. So you need to tune in so you can get the information.
Bishop, I needed you. I mean, I've been robbing all these years, but I just couldn't get marketers to understand. I'm robbing. They said, I'm robbing. What does robbing do? I'm robbing, you know? And then they said, man, we need a Batman. So I'm so happy that we did Robin and Batman, or Batman Robin. Now, it don't matter how you say it, but I've been robbing. I've been out here robbing him for a long time.
I'm glad you Robin in terms of the name Robin and not Robin in terms of robbing. Listen, Miss C won't be with Miss C won't be with us this week. She won't be with us this week. Y'all keep Miss C in prayer. Will you do that? She do news and information, straight talk news and information. And for those of you listening to WIGO, if you have news and information you want to send, just have Miss C put on the program. She'll put it on. Just go out to Straight Talk News 1362 at gmail.com. 1362 at gmail.com. And don't forget to like us, subscribe, make comment, and share. Those of you watching YouTube. Well, one thing, last week we showed you the tape, or what we did, chat about a couple of years back when Donald Trump was in office, and how Donald Trump, because they would not let Obama, appoint appellate court judges, federal appellate court judges, and would not allow him appoint, Mitch McConnell would not allow him appoint a Superior Court judge. By the way, he's retiring, right? You know that, right? Mitch is giving it up.
Thank you, Jesus.
Yeah, Mitch is giving it up.
Trouble don't last always.
Always. But anyway, what happens here is we're showing you how the courts were stacked by Donald Trump at
Yeah.
the appellate court level, federal appellate court
Yeah.
level. That's why we are where we are with Judge Eileen Cannon, and we'll
Yeah.
be talking about the Supreme Court in just a minute because of
Merrick
what's really
Garner.
going
He didn't
on.
let Merrick Garner in. Right. That's right.
He wouldn't let him in. And what Trump has done, he has appointed all of those vacancies, and he has put in during his term in office a lot of young individuals in those lifetime positions, and they feel
Yep.
they're beholden to him. So that's why we're seeing what's going on the appellate court level, and now on the Supreme Court level, when he has stacked the Supreme Court with all of these MAGA judges, okay? MAGA judges. So we'll be listening to that. We're gonna, Shannon, you want to say anything before we go to Chris Hayes and
No,
Rachel?
let's go.
Okay.
Let's jump right in. Let's jump right in, and we'll talk about him coming on the outside.
Okay. We'll do it on the other side. We got Chris Hayes with Rachel Maddox and Lawrence O'Donnell that's going to be talking about what happened with the Supreme Court and how they're taking up the immunity case to protect Donald Trump so he won't have to go to trial before he's elected. Woo!
I will say something. I am mad at myself for how surprised I was. I was mad at myself as the time went by, the 2.5 weeks. I think a lot of people thought, and this was with informed speculation by people I respect, people who've clerked on the court, people who've been around the court, studied the court, know the court. There is no way they could take 2.5 weeks only then to say we're taking the case 7 weeks from now. What was your reaction to the order today?
I mean, I don't think you should be mad at yourself. I don't think you should be embarrassed. I think everybody sort of thought that was the only kind of decent explanation for how long they were taking, that they were going to not take up the case, that maybe Samuel Alito or one of the other real MAGA judges was going to be really mad about it, was going to write an angry dissent, was biding for as much time as he could because this was his last chance to insert delay, which of course is what Trump wants. I think that was, you know, if you think about the court as the Supreme Court of the United States and a rational actor and a decent one, that was a reasonable supposition, and it just turns out they're not that. And Chris, I feel you in terms of the emotion that you're bringing to this right now, and the sort of sense of urgency with which you're underscoring what this means. It's true. There just isn't any way around it. And I feel like for people who haven't been following this, if you want to know why there's a hair on fire reaction to this, if you haven't been following every interstitial, incremental bit of progress here, the important question here is not whether the Supreme Court is going to decide that Donald Trump and all presidents are immune from prosecution for crimes they committed while they were president. I mean, it would be fully insane for them to actually side with Trump here, right? Remember, this is the case where Trump's lawyer was asked by Judge Florence Pan in the appeals court, are you telling me that this guy that a president could order the assassination of his political rivals and there could be no prosecution for that? That would be okay? We'd have to let that go? Not only for the duration of his presidency, but for the duration of his life? That would be okay? And Trump's lawyers are basically like, yeah. So the idea that they're going to side with him on immunity is unthinkable and also beside the point. The conclusion that we can arrive at now based on what they have done without having to wait for the ruling is that they are ensuring that Trump will not face trial. And when they inevitably rule that presidents aren't immune from prosecution after they leave office, what that will tell Donald Trump, if by then he is president, is that he can never leave the office of the presidency. Right. And if he is voted out in 2028, he cannot leave office, and he is willing to he is welcome to commit any crimes he wants to, as long as he is still president, in order to ignore the result of that election and stay in power for life, because otherwise he is going to go to prison when he gets out. That is the way this is going to go unless the country votes Trump out, votes for Biden and against Trump in November.
Yeah, that point about the incentive structure produced by this is one that I hadn't even thought about, but it's very clearly correct. There's also, Lawrence, the point that Rachel made there, which I think is sort of interesting. You know, I was talking to people today or watching people's reaction to the news, and just the sort of the court's hope that the kind of anodyne procedural nature means that what they're doing is illegible. Right, that they can do this and like, oh, and then the news alert is like, the court will take up the immunity argument. It's like, oh, that sounds reasonable. When are they going to do it? Oh, in April. Okay, well, that's part of the play here, that they're insulated from the backlash.
Well, you know, I hate to break the mood. If that's,
Please break the mood, buddy.
So my hair isn't even warm.
Good.
On fire. But here's why. Okay, here's why. And let me just work backwards, because I think the most important thing you said in your opening remarks is that this outcome should not be up to 5 members of the United States Supreme Court. It is really up to you, the voter, and that's a version of what Rachel was just saying too. These votes, these 4 votes, because this piece of paper, all you need is 4 votes in the Supreme Court to turn out this piece of paper today. These 4 votes can be proven less important by the American people in the way they cast their own votes in November. I personally believe, having seen how well Joe Biden did in Michigan, having seen how badly Donald Trump did in Michigan and in the other states, that Joe Biden is going to be reelected. And that's why I am not worried at all about the timetable. Because we have to remind the viewers, the reason everyone's worried about the timetable is they're worried that Donald Trump becomes president on January 20th, and on the 21st, he kills both federal cases.
Yes.
But let's also remember, and I know this was just been talking about the federal case so far, Donald Trump is going to trial in New York City on March 25th on an election interference case for his first presidential election.
That is also true.
And the star witness is going to be a porn star, Stormy Daniels, whose testimony is going to be very well understood by every Trump voter out there. In fact, way more clearly understood than maybe most of the testimony in Jack Smith's case. So those things are going to happen. Let's talk about how each side won something in this decision by the court. And by the way, these things are always one page, so I'm not going to be horrified by that. They are saying that the only question they're going to entertain is whether and to what extent does a former president enjoy presidential immunity from criminal prosecution for conduct alleged to involve official acts during his tenure in office. That's the only question you're allowed to talk about in the Supreme Court. You know what that means? They just threw out half of Donald Trump's appeal, which was the double jeopardy part.
Yes, correct.
They threw it out, and they threw it out right on that single piece of paper. So they're losing already. Jack Smith won here, too, because Jack Smith said, I want to go straight to the Supreme Court. They weren't asking to go to the Supreme Court. Trump's lawyers were asking to send this case back to the 11th Circuit. That's what they were actually asking for. Supreme Court said, no.
We're going to take it.
You're coming right here.
Okay, but
so they could have delayed it more than an extra month by sending it back to the circuit.
So I don't disagree with you on the sort of channel of, is this do or die for the country? Because if he doesn't go to trial, he's going to win. I agree with you.
Yeah,
right? I agree that
the first day of the appeal.
Yeah.
If you find him guilty on this, he's going to go out on the courthouse steps and say, I'm appealing. By the way, he'll be standing on the courthouse steps probably sometime in April.
Doing the same thing.
Doing the same thing, maybe even before the Supreme Court rules. He'll be saying, I'm going to appeal the Stormy Daniels case.
So for me, I think my reaction to it isn't necessarily about the implications for what it means for the electoral chances of Donald Trump. It is a level of cravenness from the court that they're moving at this pace that I find deeply unnerving. You know what I mean? Like because the court. The thing about the court is they move fast when they want to move fast. They move slow when they want to move slow.
This particular court has never moved that fast. You know, when we look back at the Nixon court, the court that found against Nixon, we look at the Bush v. Gore court. But this court, you know, it's fast for them.
Right.
You know, but I do agree this is the most isolated court in the history of the court. So they think this is going to appear to be fast.
You just referenced the Nixon court, Rachel, and you have spent a lot of time on that period. Kate, my wife, who's forgotten more about law than I'll ever know, and who I basically just cheat off for everything, pointed out to me today that in '74, I think it's U.S. v. Nixon, the court heard arguments in July and they issued an opinion 3 weeks later. And her point about that was just that, look, that's the most similar case that we've had in our history is U.S. v. Nixon. And they, in terms of the actual opinion, moved quite quickly on that, and it was a unanimous opinion.
Well, yeah, and the other, I mean, The other big, like Nixon, if we're going to carry forward a thing from Nixon here, when you talk about the cravenness of the court, Chris, the cravenness of the court is evident in what they are doing with the pacing here, right? Like putting this off for 7 weeks, sitting on it for 2 weeks for no reason, obviously pushing all of the cases that they can pushing them to the point where Trump will be standing for election before any of us have heard the verdicts in any of those cases. Got it. It's the timing. But it's also the idea that the immunity thing is an open question. Right? Is really presidential immunity an open question? Because what's the most famous pardon in American history? Gerald Ford pardoning Richard Nixon once he had resigned and was a former president. Why did Gerald Ford pardon Richard Nixon? Quote, as a result of certain acts or omissions occurring before his resignation as president, meaning as a result of stuff he did while president, quote, Richard Nixon has become liable to possible indictment and trial. Right. Whether or not he shall be so prosecuted depends on findings of the appropriate grand jury and the discretion of the authorized prosecutor. So the idea that this is an open question, that it might be that a former president can never be tried for something that he did because he was president when he did it, is disproven by a plain reading of American history and the whole justification for Richard Nixon being pardoned in the first place. So the idea that this has to be taken up is them saying the sky is green.
Right.
And I think even for the non-lawyers among us to be able to say, you know what, the sky is not green even on our worst day, this is BS. You are doing this as a dilatory tactic to help your political friend, your partisan patron. And for you to say that this is something that the court needs to decide because it's something that's unclear in the law is just flagrant bullpucky. And they know it, and they don't care that we know it, and that's disturbing about the future legitimacy of the court.
All right, we're back, and I tell you, that was something else. A lot's going on, and we believe that, you know, that they were going to do the right thing, but it look like they ain't going to do the right thing, Shannon.
Well, I think, Bishop, that Lawrence tried to bring it back into focus, and just kind of looking. But Rachel had an interesting, Chris, all of them had a interesting take.
Right.
Bottom line is this: yeah, the court is moving slow. No, it's not going to move at a deliberate pace like it's supposed to, because the stuff that they're dealing with, the time that we're in, the machine that's backing them, and what's at play. When Steve Bannon stood up and said that they would be able to control the presidency for the next 50 years, how are they going to do that? They weren't going to be able to do it by the popular vote because as the world is changing, as places like Georgia is starting to purple a little bit, and battleground states are shifting and changing all the time. You're not going to be able to do that with your platform because you don't have a popular platform. Your policies are not popular. So then how are you going to be able to do it? You're going to be doing it by statutory law. You're going to do it through the courts. And it creates a kind of apartheid when the masses of the people want one thing, but the court is able to control what the masses receive through statutory laws. So then what Trump has done is he's fueled an army that can walk along MAGA, but this army puts on robes. And we as black folk, we're not confused. I don't know why black folk said, oh, these judges, he's doing this. We always been, what black folk, where you been? Jim Crow and Jane Crow, the judge, was also the grand wizard of the KKK. We've been used to judges that have been stacked in courts that have been stacked against us. Let us not remember Emmett Till. You had about 12 white men that took off from lunch and sat there doggedly determined to make sure that that murderer those murders would be able to go free, and they did. The judge didn't do anything about it, right? So so why are we confused today? I just think that at the last day of Black History Month, we need to extend it into March because folk then lost their mind and don't understand that what MAGA is up to, what Trump is up to. Steve Bannon said Trump is the nice guy among us. And so they put some folks in places, and they put them, they controlling the Supreme Court, they're controlling the appellate court, they're controlling the, most of the federal judiciary. And so that's their plan. That's how they're going to be able to move. So they're not going to move at a deliberate pace. They're going to try to slow everything down so that he can get in there on January 20th. And yes, on January 21st, say all this stuff goes away. But absolutely, I agree with Rachel that the reason why Nixon needed to be pardoned was because the stuff that Nixon did was wrong. So you're saying that someone can be president and do things that are against the law and they can hide behind the presidency to be able to do that? No, you will answer for what you do. You should not be able to break the law as president and have immunity from it. You should answer for it. And Nixon was going to answer for it, even though he was confused and said when the president does it, it means it's not illegal. Yes, it was. And that's why your successor had to quickly pardon you.
Well, those are really, really, really spot on points, and I'm glad you brought about the Emmett Till story, because that's what I've been talking about. Is that we have always have dealt with judges who were unfair when it came to us as a people, right? The laws that was changed that they control and they rule over. They rule based on their own opinion. The Supreme Court is supposed to be able to be the most fairest court it is, but we're seeing that because it's a stacked court now. It's not the court, the old court. It's not the Al Gore and Bush court. It's not that court. It's not that court that says okay, and then Trump is not Al Gore. To say, okay, I lost, I'm going on and live my life, and not try to disrupt the way, American way that we've been used to living under a democracy and not a dictatorship. And Rachel also said, and she said that, he would be a dictator, to your point about the 50 years, that Bannon said, that he'll be the president from now on. Once, if they don't rule on this case, he will be the president from now on. And the only way that's going to stop, as Lawrence said, is that we need to focus on turning out the vote. We need to focus on voting like we never voted before. We always say, oh man, this is the most important election there is in history. Every election, that's what we say, right? But this is truly the most important election in history. Truly. The most important election here, and we need to educate our young people about it. Now, slipping away from there, Illinois, and what your opinion is? Illinois has now voted. The judge has ruled to take him off the Illinois ballot in Illinois, Trump off the ballot, right? So Trump has a couple of days to appeal it, right? But the Supreme Court still hasn't ruled on the Colorado case. Maine case is still out there, and now Illinois. You got states talking about leaving the Union, leaving the United States, going back to their own individual self-governing system without being a part of a federal government system. So, I mean, this is mad, and it's madness that we're seeing today. And I think that many of our young people don't understand, because they don't understand civics. And how the government is formed. They don't understand that. Only thing they understand is tennis shoes and fine cars and all this other stuff, and hair and nails and all these materialistic things. But the things that's of substance for their long-term stability for their children and their grandchildren, they're missing out on it. And many are buying into this dictatorship thing. So now I heard someone said, I think a dictatorship would be good. And when I heard that, it blew my mind.
That's because they never lived in a dictatorship. That's because they never lived in a dictatorship. Because if you lived in a dictatorship, then you would know that freedom. But we have a society of young people that rush off to prison and rush off to jail, and are more comfortable with someone telling them when they can eat and wake up at 3 o'clock to be counted, and when they can do what they, rather than to enjoy the freedom of life. So the country itself is butt backwards. And to your point about states trying to secede from the Union, MAGA has already done that. The Make America Great Again union has already seceded. There's a ideological civil war that's going on right now between the United States of America and MAGA. Not the Republican Party, not the Democratic Party. It's MAGA versus the USA. That's the civil war, ideological, that we have right now. And who's at the helm of that is Trump. And who's fueling that and who's going to fuel that are the courts. And that's what we're dealing with now. So we keep talking about woke, but I don't know, we need to wake up. Let me just say that, wake up, wake the heck up, and really pay attention to what's going on.
And that's a valid point, because the Republican Party, because you got Michael Steele, who was the chair of the Republican Party, who's also conservative, right? You got the Morning Joe, who's a conservative Republican. You got all these people saying that the Republican Party is no longer the party of Reagan. It's no longer the party that it used to be. They're divided. They're divided. So you're right.
MAGA's Tea Party was January the 6th.
Right.
That's when they declared war on the United States of America. Trump not going to the inauguration, Trump having his own send-off at Andrews Air Force Base, and not going to show a peaceful transfer of power, let MAGA think that the president of the United States was not the one being sworn in on the Capitol steps. The president of the United States was the one that was getting on the plane to fly to Mar-a-Lago. And that's still the presidents of the neo Confederacy, which is MAGA.
Well, there you have it there, ladies and gentlemen. This is where we come from. This is straight talk, nothing but straight talk. We must, in our remaining minutes here on our program, we must emphasize, get out to vote, turn out to vote, educate your young people what a dictatorship is. Do you want to be under a dictator, or do you want to be in a country that you now live in? That's not all of that, but it's better than a dictatorship. It's certainly better than a dictatorship. Well, Shanan, in parting, do you have something that you want to just lay in parting with the people in parting?
Absolutely. My son turns 1 year old on this coming Sunday. I'm a 49-year-old father for the first time, and I prayed for this boy through a marriage of my wife and I for 23 years. God will do it if you trust in him and believe in him. And I'm celebrating 1 year being a daddy. Knees hurting and all that stuff I'm calling around. But that's just straight talk. That's just some straight talk.
Hey, nigga, that's why I call him Big Papa. Nigga, that's why I call him Big Papa. Ladies and gentlemen, you've been listening to nothing but straight talk with yours truly, Greg Fann, the Preacherman, and Shanan E. Jones. If you want to be on the program, we'd love to have you. All you got to do is go Straight Talk News 1362 at gmail.com. That's Straight Talk News 1362 at gmail.com. Don't forget to like us, subscribe, and make comments and share. And check us out on WIGO each and every Sunday at 7 p.m. 1570 on your AM dial. And this ain't been nothing but what, Shanan? Straight talk.
Aaron Lackey, pastor of Temple of Prayer Family Worship Cathedral, Fairburn, Georgia. Every week I listen to Greg Fann, the Preacherman, and Pastor Shanan E. Jones. Yes, that's Straight Talk. Why don't you join us?
Want to be a guest on Straight Talk? Email Greg Fann at FANN922 at Comcast.net or call 404-308-0795. Join us again for another episode of Straight Talk with Shanan Jones and Greg Fann, the Preacherman.